This video is about that short section from calling the patient in and to them sitting down and starting to tell you about their problem. It sounds like a strange thing to have a video about, but there is potential for some good rapport building there, but also some potential for the consultation to start going in the wrong direction. Now, as I said, rapport building, forming a connection with the patient, starts happening in this early section. The patient will almost certainly have thought about what they're going to say to you, what they think is important, and that's the golden minute or couple of minutes that you might hear referred to when the patient tells you about their problem. And if we overstep our rapport building or get into a conversation that might redirect that process, the patient might not get to say everything they wanted to say, or we might actually go in a completely wrong direction with the consultation at that point. So it's an interesting exercise that when you're in your GP practice, listen out to what other doctors sound like when they're calling patients in from the waiting room. I personally try and sound warm and welcoming and pleased that I'm pleased to see the patient. That's how I try to come across. Some people can be a bit worried about sounding too happy because you obviously don't know the psychological state of the patient. However, I tend to find that's not an issue. I think anyone, no matter what their state of mind is, would feel okay if they felt like the doctor wanted to see them. There is some evidence to back this up from consultations in oncology, where the majority of patients did not want the doctor to sound low and morbid. They wanted some hope in the consultation. So you want to sound, to some extent, sort of warm and welcoming. You want to give your name to introduce yourself, unless you have seen the patient very recently. So, for example, if you've seen the patient yesterday, arrange this follow-up, and then you introduced yourself again, the patient may think that you'd forgotten seeing them yesterday. So, apart from that, the other thing to be aware of is even if you've spoken to the person on the phone and then got them down, even if it was 10 minutes ago, it may not be 100% obvious to the patient that you were the one that spoke to them. So you want to state that fact. So if I was calling John Smith in, who I just spoke to on the phone, I would say something like, John Smith to room 7, please. Hello, Mr. Smith. I'm Dr. Benfield. I spoke to you on the phone about 20 minutes ago. So that's how I would normally start my consultations. So I would strongly advise not bringing any small talk into that section as you're walking in and sitting down, because you don't know what the psychological state of the patient is in. It's possible you may say the wrong thing in some way, or you may get into a conversation then and disrupts the start of the consultation proper. Obviously, the patient may start some small talk with you, and so the aim is to not sound rude, but also try not to engage with that so that it goes further. So the patient may say, "Cool, it's cold out today," in which case you would say, "Yeah, it's really cold." And then they sit down. They may say something like, "But you guys are really busy," in which case say, "Yeah, we're really busy." And then they sit down. They might say, "Oh, are you new here?" In which case you say, "Yeah, started 2 months ago," or whatever it might be. So something that replies, engages, but doesn't take it further, and then the patient sits down and you get going with your first open question. Something else to look out for at this point is any clues the patient might give towards their mental state or some other factor that they kind of want you to know about. It may not be related to the main problem, but it may be important. It's something that Roger Neighbour referred to as opening gambit. So it may be physical or non-physical. So an example might be a patient might walk into the consulting room kind of going, ooh, and showing you that they're in pain with something. Now, the simple reply to that would be, so you want to acknowledge it. Anything like this, you want to make a mental note of it, but try not to engage too much with it because it might not be what they've come for. So in this situation, you might say, "Oh dear, come on down, have a seat." and then they sit down, and then you start your opening question. How can I help you today, or whatever it is you might say. It is possible that you might say, come down, sit down, tell me about this pain. And you have a 10-minute consultation about the back pain that finishes with, so anyway, I've got an appointment with orthopaedics tomorrow, so I think I've got that sorted. What I'm actually here about is, and then you think, what have I done? So don't assume that's the case. You might get a negative comment about the practice. So you might get, God, it took me ages to get this appointment. Now, you don't want to get into a conversation at this stage about the phone system or about appointments. So some kind of acknowledgement or empathic apology maybe, but not to engage. So, oh, I'm sorry about that. Come and have a seat. Would be fine. It may be something about you personally. It might be, oh, seeing another doctor, a different doctor again then. Again, you might say, yes, have a seat. Something that's sort of apologetic, empathic, but doesn't engage too much. Now, it is important that you do make a note mentally of this because it may be relevant later. So, for example, the person who wanted to demonstrate they had some back pain, you're not going to start suggesting they do Pilates or some other exercise without including the fact that you know that they've got some kind of discomfort in there. You wouldn't say to the guy who couldn't get an appointment for ages that just book an appointment with me in 2 weeks' time, because you're going to get back, have you ever tried to do that? So you probably want to say, understood it was hard for you to get an appointment. I will book the appointment for you in 2 weeks, or I will ask a member of staff to call you for 2 weeks' time. The person who said, oh, I'm seeing a different doctor again then, it's quite important to gain a bit more rapport, because you're kind of in negative credit at the start of this consultation. By the sounds of that, you want to build up extra rapport. Now, if you haven't done so already, watch the previous video, which was about checking the notes before calling patients in, because what would be good to do is during the data gathering is to make it clear you know about the patient. So you might want to drop in, oh, I've had a look at the notes when you saw Dr. Smith last week and he thought blah, blah, blah. Or, yeah, I already had a look at your ultrasound report actually, and what it showed was, or, yeah, I saw that you saw a urologist, so I had a look at the letter and what they thought. So you want to gain the patient's trust that he hasn't seen you before, but you've done some homework on him. So I hope that will make sense. So be aware of what you sound like when you call patients in. Try to be warm, welcoming, introduce yourself, make it clear you were the person on the phone if you spoke to them on the phone, limit any small talk, acknowledge while making a mental note of any clues that might help you later in the consultation. Okay, thanks.